Hi, everyone. We are here to answer a question from our newsletter subscribers. And this one really stood out to us because it's a question we get all the time from the clients and the teams that we work with. So I'm here today with my colleagues, Sarah and Alastair, and I'm Tanisi, and we're all transformation partners at the Ready. Today, we're going to answer the question, how do we make meetings smaller without making people feel left out? To kick us off, I'm going to pass it over to Alastair.
Awesome. Thanks, Tanisi. Yeah, so we wanted to start with before we answer the question directly, we wanted to start with why does this matter? Why bother to try to make meetings smaller? Can't we just keep people on the invite and won't it be okay? And the fact of the matter is that it does really matter. So, first and foremost, team size really matters and the number of people in meetings really matters. Research shows that team productivity tends to peak and then drop off pretty quickly at the sort of 6 or 7 person mark. So when you think about those 10, 15, 20 person meetings, let alone the fact that half of those people are in two meetings at once or answering email or whatever it might be, you can see that there's really going to be a cost on the effectiveness of the meeting. On top of that, there's the opportunity cost for all the people who are in the meeting that don't really need to be there. So it's not just the fact that these people are being paid and their time and energy is being invested in something that's not that helpful for them or for the team. It's that they could be doing other stuff that they're not doing because they're in this giant meeting, and that's part of the cost that's accrued from meetings that have kind of big attendee lists. And on top of that, if we only allow meetings to grow, meaning we don't have the tools and practices and agreements we need in order to help change, shrink, adjust meeting attendance as needed based on the work changing, they're just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and more expensive and more unwieldy, and people are going to just have more and more triple booked back to back days, which is just really painful and not great for the people or for the organization.
Thanks, Alistair. So yeah, it does matter. It's important. And we're going to answer your question by sharing kind of a big idea or something that we think is really important. You've probably heard us say before that if a meeting doesn't have a clear purpose, it should have. Otherwise, it's not going to be designed well. It's not going to be structured well. It's also probably not going to have the right roles in the meeting. So one of the first things that you should do if you feel like a meeting has grown, has gotten a little bit unwieldy, and you think it should be smaller, is refresh the purpose. What is that meeting for? Make sure it's really clear. And then do that next step that we don't always do of developing some guidelines or heuristics to decide which roles should actually attend the meeting. Again, based on the purpose. Starting with these guidelines or heuristics is really helpful because it makes it a little less personal when someone's not invited to the meeting or when they're no longer invited to the meeting. It's not about them. It's about the role that they hold and how it relates to the purpose of the meeting. Some example guidelines that we often share with our clients are whether or not a role has an active role to play in the meeting, given the purpose. For example, generating ideas from their specific perspective, or actually making a decision. If you have a decision holder or someone with a certain authority realm, they should be included in the meeting. If it's a role that really is just there or has been there to get information, that's probably not the right role to attend because it's probably not the best way for them to get the information. They don't need to spend their time sitting in a meeting where they could catch up via a recording or notes or by checking out the visual planner board that was used to track the content of the meeting and the next actions. Another one is there a certain perspective or expertise or context that is needed in that meeting based on its purpose, then you will want to include a role that brings that perspective or that expertise or that context. And then finally, last one is there another representative or role from either the function or the domain that is needed in the meeting? If so, you probably don't need more than one. But you certainly don't need all three people from that team or that function at the meeting. Again, based on what Alistair said earlier about opportunity cost and about just meetings get bigger and bigger, and as a result, get less and less effective. One move you might try once you've clarified the purpose and you've clarified those guidelines or heuristics, maybe you let people opt in or out themselves. So instead of just saying these roles are in, these roles are out, maybe you share that purpose, you share the heuristics with the people, especially if they've tended to be part of the meeting in the past, and ask them, does your role meet these criteria? If so, great, stay on the meeting invite. If not, hey, good news, take the time back.
To build on what both Sarah shared and Alistair shared earlier, there is times where we need to either uninvite ourselves or uninvite others from meetings to ensure that meeting is fulfilling its purpose and we're getting what we need out of that time together. And we're humans. That can feel hard to be uninvited from a meeting space. We can have a little FOMO or fear of missing out, even if that meeting was something that was taking up a lot of our time and maybe we complained about it every week. It still can feel hard to not make the invite list. So when folks are no longer being invited, whether it was their choice or not, um, it's a good idea to make it clear that they'll receive any reports or updates or actions that may impact their ability to fulfill their responsibilities or anything that they need to do their job well. If it's safe and you don't have concerns about privacy or confidentiality, you can make the meeting agenda and next actions visible to those who are not part of the meeting if you think it would help folks understand why they weren't invited to that meeting and continue to do their work and move forward. You can also treat it like an experiment. So you may decide to shrink the meeting down and then realize that you were missing a role or two in that meeting. You might have decided to keep some folks in the meeting and let go others. And you may need to flip that at some point, depending on the projects you're working on or what your organization's or team's priorities are at the moment. So make sure you ask for feedback, both from people who are still in the meeting and people who are no longer in the meeting, so you can really understand if what you're trying is working or might need to make some tweaks. I've also worked with some teams where meetings are a time to connect. Maybe it's a time to get FaceTime with your colleagues or with your manager, or just have a space to connect as team members. And your weekly meeting to unblock work and collaborate together might not be the place to make social connections, but you can reserve some time for optional meetings or gatherings where folks can still build that connection and build trust with their teammates and not waste time when they're in meetings where your purpose is different.
Awesome. Thanks, Tanisi. All right. Well, that's it from us. Thank you for the great question. As always, we're excited to hear what this sparks, what you tried, what you learned, and we'll see you next time.